Hello, welcome, welcome. This is just a simple replay of some of the speakers yesterday from the Duluth Turning Point USA rally. There was a few speakers that gave some inspiring, wonderful speeches. So I wanted to just go back and in case you missed it or you just wanted a recap of some of them, I'm going to go ahead and replay them. So thank you for joining us today. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe. Please go to Freedom of America 1776 on YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're too kind. You know, on January the 10th, 1963, read into the congressional record of our country, Congressman Herlong, the 45 goals of communism in America. And they were such things as gaining control of the public school system and the teacher union so you can indoctrinate the kids, gaining control of the news media and Hollywood so that you could change the culture of America, depressing the value of the family, removing God from the public sector, changing the churches so that instead of the real gospel, you had the social gospel, making sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy. All of these things are going on in our society today. There have always been those who have wanted to change who we are. But I gotta tell you, even though they say awful things about our country, they say we're systemically racist, we treat people inappropriately. If we were all that bad, why are all these people trying to get in here? And those who want to change our country, particularly the leftists, the Marxists, they're so close right now. You know, Benjamin Franklin, when he came out of the Constitution Hall in 1787, he was asked, "Sir, what do we have here? A monarchy or a republic?" He said, "A republic, if you can keep it." We've kept it for 248 years. We're very close to losing it right now, except our founders were very smart. They studied every civilization that ever existed, and they realized that people just don't have the ability to leave other people alone, and that governments are the same way, and that they grow, they infiltrate, and they dominate. They gave us a fail-safe. The fail-safe is we the people. That is what makes the difference. And what they put in our hands was the ability to vote, and to vote in an appropriate way. Not the way that a lot of people vote. They just look for the name that looks familiar. I mean, it could be Satan. They say, "I know that one." In many cases, it is. So obviously, that's not the way to do it. But the reason that they're so desperate right now is because they're so close to pushing us over the edge. But that's also the reason that they are so afraid of Donald Trump, because he knows who they are. He knows what they do. And they're desperate to get rid of him. One of the ways that they're able to get their way is by intimidating people and making people fearful. It sort of started with political correctness. And then it's morphed into wokeness. And now it's gotten to the place where you have cancel culture. And there are a lot of people who are afraid. So they think the right way, but they won't say anything because they don't want to be called a nasty name. They don't want to be canceled. They don't want their families to suffer any damage. But I have to tell you this truth. You cannot be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave. You know? Got to stand up for what you believe. That is so important. But after Trump wins on November the 5th, we have to remember that that's just the beginning of the fight. Because, see, they're going to do everything they can to try to make it unsuccessful. But we're not going to allow that to happen. We are not enemies. We, the American people, are not each other's enemies, but they want us to think we are. And they drive wedges between us on the basis of race, age, income, religion, political affiliation, gender, you name it, they drive wedges. But we have to be smart enough to recognize that the one world government people realize that we are the one that's in the way. They can't overcome us militarily, so they're going to try to destroy us from within by attacking our families and our faith. But we know who they are and what they're doing, and we're not going to let it happen. And I got to say something about our country. My wife and I have visited 68 countries. We have lived overseas, and there is no place like America. We have the best country that there is. And we have to do what we can to make sure that we keep it. You know, it doesn't matter where your ancestors came from. England, Jamaica, Ireland, I heard somebody say, Africa. It doesn't matter where they came from. You're better off here than you would be there. And that's the thing about America. It belongs to all of us. And one of the reasons that we have done so well is because we had a relationship with God. Our very first document, the Declaration of Independence, said that our rights come from our Creator, not from the government. And the government can't take those rights away from us. Only God can. And think about what he has done. You know the story of the bulletproof George Washington. They tried to kill George Washington in the Battle of Monongahela. They did not succeed. 59 miles away from there is Butler, Pennsylvania. They tried to get rid of Donald Trump, and they did not succeed either. Because, as I've told him for the last 10 years, God put him here for a purpose. And that's why they will not succeed. All the things that they have tried have not worked, and they will not work. And the way that we can make sure that they will not work is to make sure that we humble ourselves and pray and seek God and repent and move in the right direction once again in America. And let me just close with a little story about how God works. You know, some years ago, I was summoned to South Africa to try to help separate some conjoined twins who were deteriorating rapidly. And we were going to use the same technique that we used on the German twins before that. But when we got into the operation and opened the chest and reveal the heart of one of the twins that wasn't working. And the reason they were deteriorating is because as they grew, the one had to do all the work. So one did not have any cardiac function. We got them separated. The other one was doing okay, so we were pleased with that. But after a couple of days, that one died because it didn't have any kidney function. One had the heart function, one had the kidney function. I was so bummed out. As I was going back home, I was saying, Lord, why did you get me involved in this? Anybody could fail. You don't need me to fail. I was feeling sorry for myself. But a couple of years later, there was another set joined at the top of the head, facing in opposite direction, something we call type 2 vertical craniopicus. They had never been separated before successfully. But because we had put the team together and had all the equipment together for the one that did fail, that one was completely successful, and now they are adults who are perfectly normal. And I say that to say this. A lot of people feel that what happened to Trump in 2020 was wrong. However, it prepared the way for a magnificent success right now. Make America great again, greater than it's ever been. Thank you.
Introducing Tulsi Gabbard.
Wow. Aloha, Georgia. Amazing. It is so inspiring and electrifying to be here with all of you here tonight. How many veterans or members of the military we got in the crowd? So we got 12 days and a wake up till Election Day. The heat is on. It's funny how crazy things have been and how much has changed. You know, I was a Democrat for over 20 years. The Democrat Party that I joined is completely unrecognizable today. I never would have imagined that we would have a Democrat Party under Kamala Harris that is anti-freedom. It's the party of war, of censorship, it's the party of open borders, and it's the party of poverty. Who would have thought that Kamala Harris and Dick Cheney would define today's Democrat Party? What's crazy to me is when Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney announced their endorsement of Kamala Harris, I thought, gosh, you know, the old Democrat Party would have said thanks, but no thanks, because we're a party of peace. Not anymore. Kamala Harris, without even pretending to care about peace, shamelessly embrace their endorsements. The endorsements of those who care more about power and feeding the war machine than they do about taking care of our brothers and sisters in Western North Carolina right now. It's outrageous to me that here we are 12 days out from Election Day, and we have a presidential candidate who is celebrating sending hundreds of millions of our taxpayer dollars to help other people in other countries, supposedly help them, while turning her back on our fellow Americans who need help the most right now. We have friends who are veterans who are still out there in Western North Carolina, who are still getting out there to the small towns, who have not seen anyone from any government agency show up to help them. And their sole message to those who I met when I was out there and those who are coming and delivering whatever we possibly can to help them survive the cold at night, saying, please don't forget us. But that's what we have in the Kamala Harris presidency. If she were to be allowed to serve there as a person who doesn't care about us and who has forgotten the American people. Nothing short of freedom and our ability to live in a truly free and peaceful and prosperous country is on the line in this election. Never before have we seen a Republican pose a greater threat to the uniparty war machine in Washington than Donald J. Trump. And that's why they have been doing and are doing everything they possibly can to destroy him. First, to try to remove him from the ballot, then waging lawfare and weaponizing the Department of Justice and law enforcement at every level in a way that has never happened before in this country. Also that they could have this talking point to try to tell us, the American people, well, who are you going to vote for, a felon? Why are they doing this? They are doing this because he has the courage to take on and root out the deep corruption and rot that exists in the entrenched Washington establishment. And he's doing it for us. No matter what they throw at him, when you look at him, it seems like his resolve grows stronger and stronger. He is not backing down. So we face a pivotal time as Americans, regardless of anyone's political affiliation. The choice for us is very clear. We have a choice between a presidential candidate who has shown through her record that she would have a presidency of more war, and more war, and pushing us to the brink of nuclear war. She would have a presidency that is against free speech, not hesitating to use the levers of her power to retaliate against political opponents, as she has done with Donald Trump, as she has done with Bobby Kennedy, and she has done with me. They went so far as one day after, when Kamala Harris was announced that she would be the nominee going forward to replace Joe Biden, I spoke out on Fox News about how dangerous that would be for us as Americans if she were to be the person with the nuclear codes. The very next day, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. No explanation, no due process. It was federal air marshal whistleblowers who were so disgusted by being used as pawns by this administration, who doesn't hesitate to abuse their power, that they came forward and told the truth. This is what we need more of in our country. Now, for those of you who may have friends or family or coworkers, or those who you know in your lives who haven't made up their minds yet in this election, I encourage you to have those conversations. Listen to their concerns. Turn down all of the noise and the propaganda that is flooding the airwaves and focus on what is most important to every one of us. And that is our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. The vision that our founders had for us, that every one of us as Americans has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is up to us to save our country. Every one of us as Americans. Our founders put in our founding documents that our government will not exist without the consent of the governed. When they wrote those words, "we the people," that is and was and always will be a direct call to action to every one of us to fulfill our responsibility as citizens in this country to defend our freedom, because our freedom is on the line. So when we go to cast our votes, how many of you have already voted? All right. So that means the work you got to do over the next 12 days is to find at least 10 people in your lives who have not voted, convince them why it is important to stand together to defend our freedom and vote for Donald Trump, and don't stop calling them until they tell you that they've actually voted. Our ability to live in a truly free and peaceful and prosperous society is what is at stake in this election, and that affects all of us, no matter who we are or where we come from. There's no doubt in my mind that President Trump is our best and only hope in this election to lead our country, to save our country, and to save the world, bringing peace not only here at home, but abroad. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for freedom. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for secure borders and safe communities. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for peace. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for every one of us as Americans to be able to stand strong and proud and recognize that in this country, we are once again that shining city on a hill that is committed to our Constitution and our way of life. We've got 12 days and a wake up. When we listen to the bugle call of reveille that sounds on every military base across the country, first thing in the morning and then later at the end of the day, marking the raising of the flag and the lowering of the flag, those of you who have been on a military base understand that when that bugle sounds, everything stops. People walking down the street will stop. Cars driving down the street will stop. Everything stops for those moments because it's an opportunity for every one of us to reflect on what that flag means, to reflect on the lives that have been sacrificed, those who have paid the ultimate price to defend our freedom, and to never forget. So I encourage you, because it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of everyday life. It's easy to get caught up in the back and forth sniping that happens in our politics too much. It's easy to get caught up in the noise. It is critical for us to remain firmly rooted and grounded in our purpose and this no-fail mission that every one of us faces in this election, the most important election of our lives. That on those days when we may feel weary, on those days when your friends or your family may be spewing hate and criticism at you because of the position you have taken in supporting President Trump and defending our freedom, in those days when it feels like it's just too hard, think back to the sacrifices those before us have made so that we can gather here today in the greatest country in the world and work harder. We cannot rest until we do all we can to bring our country together around our shared ideals and principles. Vote for President Trump to send him back to the White House so that he can make America great again, and so that we can get to do the real work of making sure our government is once again of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you all so much for taking a stand for our country and for your support for President Donald J. Trump. I am proud to be with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Give a big welcome to Robert Kennedy Jr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. USA, 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 USA. You know, I was driving down here today from Atlanta, and I read an article from the New York Times that Bill Gates had just donated $50 million to Kamala Harris's campaign. And the article said that it was the first donation that he's made in 20 years, that he stayed out of politics, that he's been bipartisan. It was a dark money donation. He didn't intend for it to be public. He routed the donation through a 501c4, which was an organization that was set up to conceal large money donations to the Harris campaign. Now, he said, when the Times asked him, he said he had donated zero in the 2020 campaign when President Biden was running against President Trump. And he said this campaign is different than any other. And so he felt the need to do this. Now, do you think Bill Gates made that donation out of a patriotic impulse? Do you think he made it out of a humanitarian impulse? Do you think he made it because he wants global health? Or because he wants to make America healthy again? Well, there was something else, another article about Bill Gates that came out today that said he's just been indicted. He's been indicted in the Netherlands for lying to the public about the COVID vaccine. And he's going to have to go to trial. You think that he wants to go to trial here in the United States of America? You think maybe that's one of the reasons he chose to give $50 million to Kamala Harris? Oh, I want to point out somebody who's in the audience tonight. She's a woman named Sherry Peebles. And Sherry, are you here? Will you stand up if I can point you out? Okay, so Sherry Peoples is an African-American woman who has a daughter, Shayna, a straight A student. She missed 60 days of school because she was in a hospital because she had sickle cell anemia. And her mom, Sherry, filled out all the forms, the federal and the state forms, explaining why she was missing her school. She did her schoolwork every day. She got straight A's, as I said. But Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of California. And Kamala Harris learned that the state was losing $1.3 billion a year because of truancy. And she said, I want that money. So I'm going to start putting parents in jail whose children skip too much school. Oh, she arrested Sherry Peoples in her home. The police came in and handcuffed her. And when she said, why am I being handcuffed? The police said to her, talk to Kamala Harris. They didn't want to be doing it either. She lost her job. She lost her home. And she still raised an extraordinary child. Don't you want a president of the United States who's going to end chronic disease rather than putting parents in jail? Don't you want an America president who's going to make our country healthy again? I saw another posting while I was driving down here today that shocked me too, actually. One was of President Obama saying that he didn't understand. That he didn't understand where all the division was coming from and the polarization in this country. And then there was another posting by Kamala Harris standing outside the Naval Observatory, which is the official residence of the Vice President of the United States, standing behind the presidential seal for our country, and comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. And saying that he was a fascist. And she based this extraordinary, irresponsible accusation on a story by John F. King, who was the director of Department of Homeland Security under Donald Trump and is a former Marine general and is deep into the deep state and to the intelligence apparatus in this country. Or John F. Kelly, I'm sorry. And Kelly told another story that Donald Trump had, during his presidency, Donald Trump learned that there was a Mexican-American soldier who had been murdered at Fort Hood, and that the Pentagon was refusing to pay her medical expenses, her funeral expenses. And Donald Trump said, if they won't do it, then I'm going to do it myself. And he paid her expenses out of his own pocket. And in order to discredit this extraordinary gesture of love and generosity by the American president, a soldier who he had never met before, John Kelly invented a story that he had made an insensitive remark about Mexicans. Unfortunately for Kelly, there were 3 people in the room at that time who all said that Kelly was lying, and it was an outright fabrication. So we need to wonder, when Kelly invents this story that says that, where he said that President Trump wanted generals around him who were like Hitler's generals, which of course he didn't say. We already know that Kelly is a liar. And that Kelly invented other stories that were derogatory about the president. And these are the kind of stories you're seeing from all the generals and the intelligence agents who do not want to see Donald Trump in office again. And we have now somebody who's running for the presidency of the United States, a vice president, who is repeating these irresponsible stories. And to me, that alone disqualifies her for the presidency. You all know that when we were most Americans, when we're growing up, of my age at least, we were asked about this moral quandary about whether we would, if we could go back in time and kill a young Hitler, should we do that? And half the people say yeah, half maybe say no. But it's something that we all think about. And you think about how many unstable people there are in this country. And when you compare an American president to Hitler, you're pressing a button in those people to make them act on those violent aspirations and impulses. And it's at worst, don't you want a president who's going to bring America together again? Who's going to end the polarization and the division in our country? I left the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party left me. The Democratic Party that I grew up with was the party of peace. It was the party of constitutional rights, including free speech. It was the party of women's rights and women's sports. My uncle, Ted Kennedy, wrote Title IX to make sure that women could play sports with other women. It was the party of cops and firefighters and working people. And it was the party that stood up to Wall Street, the big banks, big ag, big pharma, big food, and all of the other vested interests that have gained ownership of our government and have captured our agencies and made them predatory against the American public. And the Democratic Party today is the party of war. It is the party of surveillance, of censorship. You listen to President Harris boast about the people who are supporting her, who have flocked now to the Democratic Party, people like John Kelly, people like Dick Cheney. Do you want Dick Cheney back in the White House? And people like John Bolton. These are the people who wrote the Patriot Act, the act that launched the surveillance state, that launched the national security state, that introduced torture and introduced surveillance and allowed the CIA to spy on the American public for the first time in our history. They're the people who gave us the Iraq War, who lied to us in order to get us into the Iraq War. That war was the worst foreign policy blunder in American history. That war cost $4.3 trillion. And we killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein. We created ISIS. We drove 4 million refugees into Europe and destabilized every democracy in Europe for generations. Brexit is a direct result of that war. All of the riots we're seeing now in European cities are a result of that war. The rise of totalitarianism across Europe, the end of free speech across Europe is a result of that war. And don't you think we should have learned a lesson from that war? You think the Democratic Party learned that lesson? You think Dick Cheney has changed his opinion about the Patriot Act? No, he's changed parties because he thinks the Democratic Party is now the party of the neocons. It's the party of surveillance, of censorship, of war. And it's the party that is a cheerleader for big ag, for big pharma, for the people who are poisoning our children. The most existential threat that our country faces today is this chronic disease epidemic. When my uncle was president, I was a 10-year-old boy. 6% of Americans had chronic disease. 3% were obese. We spent $0 every year treating chronic disease. Zero. Today, 60% of Americans have chronic disease. About 70% are obese or overweight. Do you know how many people are obese and overweight in Japan? 3%. Same as here in 1963. We have 70%. 77% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. The diabetes rates in our country have gone from virtually zero. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw one case of diabetes in his entire 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 children who walk through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. When I was a kid, and today, in the 70-year-old men, 1 in 10,000 people had autism. Today, 1 in every 34 of our children have autism. 1 in every 22 boys. This is existential for our country. We're spending $4.3 trillion on chronic disease. That's 5 times our military budget. This is going to destroy our country unless we have a president who's going to end it forever. And that's why I am fighting every waking moment for the next 15 days to make sure that Donald Trump is elected president of the United States. Now, when I was a kid, the Republicans controlled all the money in this country. 70% of the wealth in our country was owned by Republicans, about 30% by Democrats. Today, 70% of the wealth is owned by Democrats and 30% by Republicans. There's been a total inversion of policy and of the constituencies of both these parties. The Republican Party has been become the party of working people in this country. About a month ago, I was with Charlie KIRK. Let's give a big hand for Charlie KIRK. And he said to me, he said, Donald Trump ran all the billionaires out of the Republican Party, like Bill Gates. And yesterday, it was announced that Kamala Harris has raised $2 for every $1 that has been raised by Donald Trump. That's because it's all coming from people like Bill Gates. And they have all the money now. We of all the people. Do you think that Kamala Harris could put together a crowd like this? No, no way. We are going to win this by a landslide. USA, 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 USA. Don't you want a president of the United States that is going to defend our Constitution? I'll say one other thing. President Harris said today in her post, in her speech, she said that President Trump was going to turn the US military against the American public and use the public to promote his agenda. How many of you think that is true? Well, what's interesting to me is that the Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send exactly lethal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the US military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Technically, now it's legal for the US military under this directive. It will become legal for the US military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protest because they disagree with policies in the White House. I'm not making this up. Any of you can look it up. This is a Democratic initiative. This did not come during the Trump administration. This did not come from Donald Trump. It came from the Democratic Party. And that's why I left the Democratic Party. Don't you want a president of the United States who's going to protect our Constitution? Oh, you want a president who's going to end all the foreign forever wars? Oh, you want a president who's going to stand up for free speech? Oh, you want a president who's going to stand up for the Bill of Rights? And don't you want a president who is going to stand up for the Constitution of the United States in every way? And don't you want a president who has the guts to stand up to the CIA? And don't you want a president who is able to stand up to the military-industrial complex and to BlackRock and to Bill Gates and to State Street and Vanguard and Wall Street and Big Ag and Big Pharma and Big Food? And don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again? And vote for Donald Trump. God bless you all. God bless America.
Please welcome Tucker Carlson.
business trip. Thank you. I can't believe I'm here. Oh yeah. I have never in my life spoken at a political rally. I've covered a million of them for over 30 years, and I've never spoken at one, never thought I would. And I'm so thrilled. I'm honored to be here. I really am. And I am. It's totally without shame and entirely with gratitude I'm standing here. And I can't believe I just spoke after Bobby Kennedy. It's so cool. So here we are at an enormous Donald Trump rally less than 2 weeks before the presidential election. I'm following Bobby Kennedy Jr. And somewhere in a half-empty Union Hall in a cold state is Dick Cheney's creepy little daughter campaigning with Kamala Harris. And I have to say, that is a thrilling trade as far as I'm concerned. I never thought I would live to see the day when Bobby Kennedy would be one of the most beloved figures in a room full of Republicans, and Mr. Burns from The Simpsons and his criminal daughter would be Democrats. It's just absolutely wonderful. So here's my perspective. I think Donald Trump's going to win, which is amazing. And that's why I'm here. I'm not here because he's going to win. I'm here because I'm so thrilled by what I've watched over the past 9 years. This is the end of a redemption arc. I've really never seen anybody treated like Donald Trump was treated, ever. Anybody, ever. Attack him. I watched this all up close. Defame him. Indict him. Arrest him. Let him get shot in the face. And he's going to win anyway. Oh. It is a triumph. It's a triumph. The phrase triumph of the human spirit has been turned into a cliche by the people who write movie posters, but it doesn't make it any less real. Donald Trump's victory will be a triumph of the human spirit. It will be a triumph of Americans over the machine that seeks to oppress them. It'll be a middle finger wagging in the face of the worst people in the English-speaking world who are leaders. It will be a moral victory the size of which I never thought I would live to see. And it's essential. It is so important that that happens for a couple of reasons, and here's what they are. The first is to dissolve for all time, for the world to see, the primary lie about Donald Trump, which is that only freaks and misfits like him. That's a lie. And they've been telling that lie since the second he came down that escalator 9 years ago. If you like that, there's something wrong with you. You're the only person you know who likes that. You're a freak. Be ashamed. Do not talk about Donald Trump in public. Don't wear his dangerous little red hat. And if you're in the media, how dare you speak to him? And that was a lie from day one. It was a big lie. It was January 6th is an insurrection. What? It's the kind of lie that they tell relentlessly. They punish anyone who contradicts the lie because it is so preposterous it can only be upheld through force. And in the last 3 months, we have seen that lie dissolve like the Wicked Witch of the West under a bucket of water. Look around. Is this a room full of freaks and misfits? No, it's not. This is a room full of people who love their country enough to obey its laws, who sincerely believe in its founding precepts, who pay their taxes, who go to work. The ever-shrinking percentage of Americans who work a 40-hour week, who expect nothing from the system, and who have given their lives for the system, who are born in this country and plan to die here. and they're the most mistreated group in this nation, and they're also the biggest group in this nation. They're not some weird subculture of MAGA, they're America itself. And the only people who are denying that are the freaks and the misfits, who it turns out are themselves a tiny, bizarre minority, a cult, who have controlled the rest of us through fear and aggression. And that has ended. And it has ended thanks to the heroic stand that a couple of individuals have taken, first among them Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who single-handedly saved the First Amendment to the Constitution, which, let me remind you, is not just a feature of America, it's the basis of America. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It's what separates the free from the enslaved. Slaves are not allowed to say what they think. Free men have God-given right to do so and will. And this is the only country on earth in which that is guaranteed. And without Elon Musk, it wouldn't be, because he stands alone as the owner of a media platform that is still open. There's only one, and it's X. It's foreign-born Elon Musk. And then for him to come out, and by the way, just for the record, I've taken not $1 from Elon Musk, okay? It's not a paid advertisement, it's just an observation. And this is heartfelt gratitude. And when you see the richest man on planet Earth stand up there in a t-shirt, start jumping around on stage, he's also one of the biggest federal contractors. People say, oh, he's got FU money. No, it's just the opposite. There is no such thing as FU money. The more money you have, the more vested you are. There's only FU poverty, actually, is the truth. And Elon Musk has more to lose than any living American by taking the position that he did, and he did it anyway. And so what's the message? If the person who's created the most, not just piles of cash, he's not Larry Fink, he's not worshiping money like our finance class, he's building things. And if that guy is for Donald Trump, and not only not ashamed of it, he's jumping around in a t-shirt, I can see his belly button, he's so excited, then maybe I'm not alone. Maybe I'm not the freak. Maybe what you're really watching is the tyranny of MSNBC, a channel with virtually no viewers, a channel on which almost every single person has a personal life so grotesquely weird, if you knew the details, you'd call for their arrest. That's just true. And those people, the unhappiest people in this nation, are defining the terms of the conversation? I don't think so. How'd they get away with that? The same way they got away with calling January 6th an insurrection for 3 years, by repeating it and by attacking anyone who disagreed. But it's an illusion. It's the Wizard of Oz. And once you pull back the curtain and the only thing back there is Joe Scarborough, you're like, wait a second. Why am I taking orders from this guy? He's a freak. I'm a normal person. And that realization has settled on this country, on the whole country, and you feel it. People are not afraid anymore at all. I've got a bunch of kids. I texted them, I'm going to go speak at a Trump rally. My kids, you go. I said, do you have a lot of friends who are voting for Carmela or whatever her name is? No, of course not. That's embarrassing. It has flipped. The story the country tells itself about reality has flipped. None of the normal people are supporting the Democratic machine. Tim Walz is supporting the Democratic machine. A man you would never allow to babysit your own children. That's the archetype. It's the party of weirdos, of envy, of hate, of resentment, of bitterness, of weakness, of a total lack of creativity. It's a party of conformity. It's a party of the machine, where it doesn't matter who the candidate is because individuals are immaterial. All that matters is the collective. That's the Soviet model. And opposing them is the rest of the country, slowly waking up to the fact that these people have no moral authority whatsoever. They have no legitimacy in a democracy where the government must rule by the consent of the governed. They have no consent. And the way that they've treated this country over the past 4 years is the most shocking thing I've ever seen in 55 years. To allow millions of people, mostly young men with no skills and no English, into our country illegally, and then fly them around at our expense and give them phones and put them on welfare programs that no American citizen can get. It is the most insulting, yeah, boo, but it's worse than boo. That's the biggest crime in the history of the United States of America. And it takes incredible stones, incredible gall for the people who did that to stand up there on a stage and give you a lecture about how you're immoral. It's too much. And so that's the second important thing about this election, okay? The first is every person in this room needs to understand you are not in a despised minority. You are in an incredibly gentle and tolerant majority who put up with this crap for way too long. As they insulted not only you, but the memory of your ancestors who died for this country. They tore down statues to their memory. People have never built anything in their lives. They went out of their way to humiliate you and spit on you and the graves of your ancestors. And that's not an exaggeration, they did that. And this country is so nice, it's so polite, it's so thoughtful and empathetic and sweet. It's the kind of country that loves dogs and gives directions to strangers, that we put up with it for 4 years. But we can't anymore. We just can't. And we can't for two reasons. The first reason that we can't put up with it for one more minute is because it's just not justice. It's not justice, it's unfair. You cannot reward the most parasitic, useless, violent, nasty, aggressive people in your country. You can't make them the richest, you just can't. It's just wrong. In a fair, decent country, the people who work the hardest, who have the highest level of talent, who are the most creative, who are the most decent to their neighbors, who give the biggest tips to waitresses, those people should be successful. Those people should be revered. It shouldn't be Larry Fink. Are you joking? Kamala Harris shouldn't have a job. She has no skills. How did we wind up with a system where Kamala Harris, you couldn't change the tire on your truck, much less drive it? How did she wind up at the top of the pyramid? And then once she's there, she lectures you like you did something. It's too much. You can't allow that. It's an offense against the truth, against reality, and against justice itself. And the second reason you can't allow it is very familiar to anyone who has children, which is if you allow it, you will encourage more of it. If you allow people to get away with things that are completely over the top and outrageous, if you allow your 2-year-old to smear the contents of his diapers on the wall of your living room and you do nothing about it, if you allow your 14-year-old to light a joint at the breakfast table, if you allow your hormone-addled 15-year-old daughter to like slam the door of her bedroom and give you the finger, you're gonna get more of it. And those kids are gonna wind up in rehab. It's not good for you and it's not good for them. No. There has to be a point at which dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. Dad comes home. And he's pissed. Dad is pissed. He's not vengeful. He loves his children. Disobedient as they may be, he loves them. Because they're his children, they live in his house. But he's very disappointed in their behavior. And he's gonna have to let them know. He's gonna have to get to your room right now and think about what you did. And when dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now. And no, it's not gonna hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it's not. I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. And you earned this. You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl. And it has to be this way. It has to be this way because it's true. And you're only going to get better when you take responsibility for what you did. That's not said in the spirit of hate. It's not said in the spirit of vengeance or bigotry. Far from it. It's said in the spirit of justice, which is the purest and best thing there is. And without it, things fall apart. The Democratic Party machine, and notice I'm not beating up on Kamala Harris, who's just a hapless victim who happened to be there in the right color, so they grabbed her. Tim Walz, they needed some, whatever Tim Walz is. They needed a weak man because it is the party of weak men and unhappy women. One of which leads to the other, by the way. Where you find weak men, you will inevitably find unhappy women. Sorry. And they make them on purpose. They weaken the men to drive the women insane, to have the most consistent voting bloc ever in the history of politics. Unhappy women, made unhappy by weak men. But it could be anybody. It could be anybody. Kamala Harris is just a stand-in. She's a cardboard cutout. She has a soul. God created her. I'm not attacking her humanity. But there's nothing there. It doesn't matter. If it wasn't Kamala Harris, it would be, I don't know, Pete Buttigieg or whatever. Who are these people? It doesn't matter. They're the cutouts. They work for the machine. They're totally dispensable. They're replaceable. And they need to have limits set for them. And so on election day, and I sincerely believe Donald Trump's going to win. And if I thought he was going to lose, I'd be here anyway, by the way. I would. In fact, I would have been here earlier if I thought he was going to lose, just to make the point. I mean it. I don't like people who jump on the winning train, okay? I think Donald Trump's going to win. And not only do I think Donald Trump's going to win, I think that the vibe shift has been so profound. I mean, the numbers suggest he's going to win. He's ahead in all 7 battleground states. But much more important, and the early voting seems to be favoring him. But more important even than the conventional political markers is what you smell around you. And it's the return of freedom. It's the return of the country you grew up in, where you could say things like, I like that guy, and maybe you like the other person. That's fine. That was not allowed for 9 years. And it's allowed now. And I think, and it's because of what they did, by the way, they deserve this. But I think the vibe is so strong right now, I don't think we can get away with pretending something else happened. I don't think we can have another 2020 at this point. I just don't. I don't. Where they hid relevant facts from you, they prevented you from knowing about their candidate and then claimed victory, or 37 billion votes or whatever they claim he got. That's rigging the election, period. If the government prevents people from knowing critical information about a candidate, they have rigged the election. And they did that, period. Oh, you're not allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to say it because it's 100% true. And every person who hears it knows it's true, including the people who did it. I don't think they can do that again. I don't. And I don't think, no matter what they pull 2 weeks from now, 13 days from now, I don't think they can get away with standing up and being like on MSNBC, no, actually, Kamala Harris is a historically popular, it turns out. Woman who's never had a job, who can't even pronounce her own first name consistently. That's how false she is. Some woman who grew up in Montreal, Canada is lecturing me about America. Okay. I don't think they can do that because I don't think people are going to sit back and take it. I don't. It's enough. It's enough. That's the point at which you say, no, I'm sorry. I put up with this crap for a long time. I indulge your little fantasy. It's like when your teenage girl becomes a vegetarian, you're like, okay, that's, okay, it's fine. No, I totally understand. You're like, it's a phase. But if that phase goes on for 9 years and includes destroying your major cities and allowing your country to be invaded by millions of foreigners whose identities you don't know and whose purpose in this country is unclear, by the way, Why shouldn't we feel threatened by that? If they go out of their way to crush families, to make it impossible for your kids to buy a house, and getting involved in the sex lives of your children, which they are, if they do all of that, they need to lose. And at the end of all of it, when they tell you they've won, no. You can look them straight in the face and say, I'm sorry, Dad's home, and he's pissed. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Charlie KIRK, founder and president of Turning Point Action.
How we doing, Georgia? I'll tell you, this is a historic moment, everybody. By the way, have you been seeing the early voting numbers out of this state? Who here has voted already? Raise your hand if you voted already. Look at that. You are living through a once-in-a-generation realignment, everybody, where it is no longer Republican versus Democrat. It's no longer the traditional dividing lines of a generation prior. You've seen tonight something remarkable. You saw two people who ran for president of the United States as a Democrat, endorse Donald Trump, and be here as our movement accepts them warmly. You see, they say Donald Trump is the best at deals the world has ever seen. And just look at this deal. We get Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy, they get Liz Cheney. Not bad. We get Elon Musk, they get Adam Kinzinger. You can have them. You can have the warmongers of a generation prior while we diversify, deepen, and strengthen our movement to include people that otherwise would never have been part of the Republican Party. Who here is a former Democrat? Raise your hand. Look at that. And by the way, you are all welcome in our movement because the Democrat Party left you a long time ago. As many of you know, I visit college campuses so you don't have to. Just yesterday, we were on the campus of University of Georgia. Some dog fans here? Now, I'm going to get a text message from Ted Cruz, but good job, guys, last weekend. That's all I'm going to say. It was so amazing. Off to the side, there was this sad, pathetic display of misfits of 5 people at the Harris Walls table. And just feet away, we had 5,000 students attend our event at the University of Georgia. 5,000 students. In fact, the Democrats are so confused at what is going on. Never before has conservatism, the ideas of freedom, liberty, American exceptionalism, been so popular on these college campuses. You see, they're feeling what you're feeling, but even more so. This is the most depressed, sick, medicated, anxious generation in history. They are the first generation since George Washington to have their life and their standard of living worse off than their parents. This is a broken social contract. And how many of you feel as if the DC political class has forgotten you? The college students that I'm talking to, when they hear Kamala Harris continue on her diatribe of nothing, they recognize and realize that the DC political elite has failed them for one exception, that there were new wars under Bush and new wars under Obama and new wars under Biden, but for 4 years, there were no new wars. And that for the last 4 years, people have been getting poor. In Atlanta, in order to buy a home when Donald Trump was president, you need to make $75,000 a year. Now it requires $135,000 a year, and interest rates are near 10%. And understand, this is intentional. They're trying to create a nation of renters because when you rent, they can control you. When you own property, you're a free citizen and they can't tell you what to do. In order to create more conservatives and more people who love the country, you need to have the 3 M's. Young people need to get married, they need to mate, and get a mortgage. The 3 M's are 3 things the Democrat Party is against. They do not celebrate marriage. They certainly do not celebrate having children. They had an abortion truck at their national convention, and they're making it harder than ever to buy a home. Donald Trump is running on a once-in-a-generation campaign to revitalize the American dream for a generation that has been mortgaged by the DC political class over the last 50 years. And where we are right now in Georgia will determine the future of America. You see, we are doing exceedingly well with early voting right now. And this is a very important distinction. Election day is the last day of voting. We have 12 days of voting left in this state. We have days of voting still to remain. So for those of you that have already voted, you need to go find a low propensity voter, someone that is a little shaky about voting, and get them out to the polls. You have 12 days to outwork the Democrats, and that is my main message to you here. Do you really think, after they tried to put Donald Trump in prison for 700 years, they've tried to assassinate him a couple times, impeach him a couple times, that they're gonna roll over in the next 12 days? You think they're gonna hand us the keys to the White House? What Tucker said is correct. The early voting numbers are good. The voter registration numbers are good. We draw crowds 10 times, 100 times bigger than them. But you're trying to tell me that John Brennan and James Comey and Clapper and Susan Rice and Barack Obama are just gonna say, you know what? We're 12 days out. Go have the White House, MAGA. No, 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 no. Instead, you must be on guard. In fact, you must be vigilant that these people are gonna try something in a panic despair, the likes of which we've never seen, because they know that their time is running out. They know the American people are ascendant and that their time will soon come on November 5th. So what does that mean? And you could smell it in the air. You could smell the panic. You can smell the desperation. You could smell the disgust of what they see coming forward. And the thing that scares them and terrifies them more than anything else, is that we not just vote, but we get new people to go vote, and we chase every single voter in this state and in Arizona and in Nevada and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Wisconsin and Michigan. You see, you're going to be able to tell your kids and your grandkids about this moment. You're going to be able to tell them about the moment that you were in Georgia and the entire country was put in jeopardy. You are going to be able to tell them about when the Constitution was put in suspense. And that is why this election feels bigger than any other election that we lived through. Because it's not just the typical corporate tax rate debate that we have enjoyed. Instead, it is so much bigger. It is civilizational defining. And you need to go to every single person you know and say, are you voting for Trump? You know, I don't know if I'm gonna vote. And you have to repeat this. You say, no new wars, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, largest deportation effort ever, drill baby drill, gas prices low, restoration of the Constitution, Supreme Court justices we can trust, and an end to the lawfare. Those 10 things you tell every swing voter you know in this state, and you commit it to memory. And it's going to require a citizen force, because these next 12 days will define the future of our republic. And that is why you are here. That is why you waited hours and hours and hours to get into here. And that is exactly what we're doing at Turning Point Action, to register new voters in states that are still registering voters, like Michigan, and same-day registration. And as I travel the country, and I'm doing this on college campuses, I can feel a surge, the likes of which was even greater than 2020, the likes of which that was even greater than 2016. It is a citizen-led movement. And let's just remember what we have been through, everybody. The forces of darkness have tried everything they possibly can. And what does success look like? It looks like no matter what you throw at this movement, no matter how much you tar and feather us, smear, slander, call us names, cancel us, you call us a racist, or you try to put our candidate in jail, that we understand that this is a different type of divide. This is the citizens of a country who we own the country, not them. We own the country, not them. We're in charge, not you. You work for us. And we are going to send a message. And Donald Trump is a metaphorical, you hear that, media? A metaphorical Tomahawk missile against the DC ruling regime to send them a reminder, we're in charge, you're not, we're the boss, you're not. You see, the media, they're starting to really get upset and say, why is it that people are still voting Trump after all these things? It's because of all these things that we're still voting for Trump. Because I look at a man who refuses to give up. They say, well, is this someone that you want your kids to grow up and to look up to? I say, yes, I'm gonna tell my son that in the line of fire, that if you ever think as if things could ever get dark and you rise and you say, fight, 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 I want my son to be like that one day. I want my kids to look up to a president that even though they take his business empire away and he's facing 7 lifetimes in prison, he keeps on fighting for you, where he has nothing to gain and everything to lose to get into the arena. There has never been a candidate in modern American history that has lost so much for something that did not benefit him, but instead put you in the room. And that is why they are so anxious and nervous. I want you to understand what's going on here. Right now, they are popping pills at Pfizer that Bobby Kennedy might run the FDA and the CDC, everybody. Right now, the warmongers in DC are shaking. They're trembling like a leaf that Tulsi Gabbard might go in and expose the fraud of us sending $200 billion to Ukraine while our border remains wide open. The government gangsters, as Kash Patel would put it, that have robbed us blind, they're starting to get really nervous saying, is Elon Musk really gonna come in and look at our budgets? Oh, you better believe Elon Musk is gonna come in and look at your budgets. The Department of Government Efficiency czar. And what a combo team, everybody. It is from people that have gained so much in the system and a bottom up. And the only people supporting Kamala Harris are the ones that are happy robbing more from you and covering up for their crimes. Let me say that again. The only people supporting Kamala Harris are comfortable robbing more from you and covering up for your crimes. For 50 years, this part of America has grown poorer while the kingdom of Washington, D.C. has grown infinitely richer. The wealthiest counties in America are all centered around Washington, D.C. And the heartland of this country and the industrial base of this country, where the muscular class built this country, have seen their jobs shipped over to China, and we got a bunch of opioids in return and piles of plastic and deteriorated neighborhoods that we no longer recognize. And in a series of events that only God could orchestrate, in a series of events that only our divine Father could put together, the most unusual set of circumstances is that a billionaire from New York had to get in the arena to tell the other billionaires that have been robbing you, the game is over, you're fired, and the American people are back in charge again. I will close with this. We are here in a state that is a very Christian state, a state that loves God and loves Jesus. If there was my biggest concern of this election, it is the faithful, it is the pastors that are not engaging right now in this election. We have 12 days left, and you need to lovingly challenge pastors that are silent, that you have a biblical obligation to engage in this election, that you have a biblical obligation to fight evil and to exalt righteousness. For no other reason than 320,000 missing kids on our southern border right now, which is modern day slavery, and Donald Trump will put an end to it. Donald Trump is the most pro-life president in American history, as he was responsible for the reversal of Roe versus Wade, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and more than anything else, everybody is on the other side. The Democrat Party supports everything that God hates. The Democrat Party is espousing the death of the unborn, the mutilation of our teenage kids, open borders, the destruction of our sovereignty, the elimination of our currency status. I believe there is a spiritual battle happening around all of us, but don't expect a spiritual victory if our own pastors do not engage. Right now, this state is a Christian state. I want to see that to continue, but we need the faithful. We need those of you that have influence over your congregation to put pressure on your pastors. And those, if you're a pastor watching this right now, I hope this touches you. I hope you, and I'm looking right in the camera right now, I hope you give a Sunday sermon and you talk about how the Democrat Party believes everything that God hates. I hope you tell your congregation how to biblically vote. I hope you challenge them and tell them to get in the arena. Because everybody, we have 12 days of voting left. This state will determine the future of America. Go vote now. Fight evil. Get in the arena. And if we do that, on November 5th, we'll be looking at that beautiful CNN clip. Donald Trump elected the 47th president of the United States. God bless you guys. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern with Donald Trump live from Tempe, Arizona. Thank you. I just wanted to replay these special speeches because, you know, there was some great speeches there, and I didn't want anybody to miss them. And get out and vote if you haven't. It's so important. America, the government is us. It's time to stand up. Join us back here at 3 p.m. Thank you.